मैं फाइनली मेरी माँ को बोल सकता हूँ मैं आईआईटी गया एक दिन के लिए. एक्चुअली दैट्स नॉट ट्रू. आई हैव बीन टू आईआईटी बिफोर व्हेन आई वाज 19 इयर्स ओल्ड. आईआईटी बॉम्बे में मेरा एक दोस्त था और उसने बहुत बड़ी गलती की. ही शोड अस व्हाट यू गाइस स्टोर ऑन योर सर्वर्स. तो मैं 2 हार्ड डिस्क लेके गया एक रात आईआईटी बॉम्बे एंड आई रेडेड योर सर्वर्स. Still use those hard disks, still not finished using all of them. I see some of you smiling. You know what's on your servers. You know what you use. How many people here have accessed the stored media on your servers? Raise your hand. It's okay, don't be shy. This is a safe space. I think. I can't be sure. ऊपर के लोग कैसे हो? बहुत सही, very good. Why are you so polite? Make some noise, guys. I am not Dr. Vogels yet, don't worry. It's okay. They were like, see, Dr. Vogel is a very smart person. So they said he's going to sound smart anyway. But if we get a very stupid person before him, he'll sound even smarter. Which is why I am here today. Today, the topic of today is innovation unleashed. All right. And I think we can all agree India is the country of peak innovation. Okay? No one is more innovative than Indians. Like, for example, when I went to IIT Bombay with those 2 hard disks, to leave, we were not allowed to leave with the hard disks. तो हमने मेरे दोस्त के गाड़ी के स्टेपनी में वो हार्ड डिस्क डाला और फिर निकले हम आईआईटी से. ठीक है. दैट इज हाउ इनोवेटिव वी आर. मोस्ट इनोवेटिव. हाउ मेनी पीपल हियर हैव रिसीव्ड अ स्कैम कॉल रिसेंटली? से स्कैमर से फोन आया, इनोवेटिव स्कैमर. क्या बात कर रहे हो? नहीं हुआ. मेरा मस्त फेडेक्स स्कैम हुआ रिसेंटली. उन्होंने फोन किया मुझे और बोला हम दिल्ली पुलिस स्टेशन से बात कर रहे हैं. एक तो दिल्ली पुलिस स्टेशन, आई लव इट. इतने बड़े शहर में बस एक पुलिस स्टेशन है जिसका नाम है दिल्ली पुलिस स्टेशन. ठीक है. हम दिल्ली पुलिस स्टेशन से बात कर रहे हैं. आपके आधार कार्ड पे ड्रग्स वाला कुरियर मिला है हमें. आई वाज लाइक क्या बात कर रहे हो? आ रहा है कि जा रहा है? ठीक है. नहीं, उसने बोला बाहर जा रहा है. हम लाइक क्या बात कर रहे हो? कहां जा रहा है? उसने बोला वियतनाम कैम्बोडिया जा रहा है. अब मुझे गुस्सा हो गया. ठीक है. आई डोंट नो हाउ मच यू नो अबाउट कैम्बोडिया, बट दैट इज वेयर अ लॉट ऑफ ड्रग्स कम फ्रॉम. सो आई एम लाइक व्हाट सॉर्ट ऑफ फेल्ड बिजनेसमैन एम आई कि मैं वहां ड्रग्स भेज रहा हूं. लाइक व्हाई एम आई इंपोर्टिंग टू द अल्टीमेट एक्सपोर्टर. ठीक है. तो फिर आई एम लाइक अब मजा आएगा. आई एम लाइक कौन सा ड्रग्स? तो वो बोलता है सर एमएमडीए. आई एम लाइक क्या बात कर रहे हो? एमएमडीए कितना? उसने बोला सर 4 किलो एमएमडीए. आई एम लाइक भाई चांदी. देन आई स्टार्ट मेसिंग विद हिम. आई एम लाइक नहीं सर आप झूठ बोल रहे हो, मैंने तो 6 किलो भेजे थे. आप पहले वो 2 किलो वापस कीजिए, उसके बाद बात करते हैं. Then he hung up on me. So I out-innovated the innovator. So just remember, if anybody calls you saying that your drugs are being sent out of the country, first ask for them back. That's the most important thing that I need to tell you all right? I also want to know, on average, what is the age over here? People who are 18 years old, raise your hands. Adorable. People who are 19 years old, raise your hands. People who are 20 years old, raise your hands. Is there anybody here who's 17 years old? You overachieving piece of, I don't understand your generation, okay? Like I want to say right now, like over the next 10 minutes, I'm going to say some really horrible things about your generation. It's not coming from a place of hate, it's envy. All right? I'm envious of your generation. You all have things that we did not have, and you all don't have some nonsense things that we had, right? Like for example, there was so much pressure when we were growing up. All right, when we were growing up, right after we finished school, our parents would start putting pressure on us. College के बारे में से क्या सोचा है? Future के बारे में क्या सोचा है? You kids are so lucky. There is no future. Like, what great pressure taken off you at such an early age. Like climate change will kill us all. Why worry? Like what a great time to be alive. Like when I was growing up, I had, it was so annoying, all right? Like you all have parents who tell you all cool things like be yourself. ठीक है. मेरा एक दोस्त था स्कूल के बाद, उसका आईआईटी एडमिशन हुआ. My mom looked at me and said, be him. This is what happened. I don't need to talk to you guys because you are those guys. You are responsible for the trauma of so many families in your own neighborhood. You have no idea. All right? It was very annoying. But now then he got a job in Bangalore with an IT company. But then I saw on LinkedIn 2 months ago कि उसका जॉब चला गया. So I went to my mom and I was like, देख बैंगलोर में है वो, अब जॉब और पानी दोनों नहीं है. मैं जीत गया माँ, मैं जीत गया. It was so good. I want by show of hands, how many people here are on LinkedIn? Shame on you. Shame on you. क्या है LinkedIn? क्या है? Like I thought, oh my God, I thought मैं ज्ञान पेलता हूँ life में, guys. फिर मैं LinkedIn पे गया. You're on LinkedIn? What was your last LinkedIn post? Share your learnings with us. Share. I want to know. Open your phone. I want to know your last LinkedIn. What is it? What Emily in Paris taught me about life journey. You know, like LinkedIn is the social network for those people जो सच में अपने engine oil के बारे में इतना सोचते हैं. Like 100%. It is number one Gyan Pelu, like social network, and I don't understand why you guys are on it. Like, please guys, do something more productive with your time than LinkedIn, like heroin or like really, there are less dangerous things in this world than LinkedIn for your brain, all right? But you guys, I'm very envious of you guys. Like, you guys know what you want. You're so sorted. But I have one problem with your generation, all right? And I know every old person says this, but you guys invent new lingo way too fast. All right? And it's fine. All generations invent new lingo. That's fair. That's allowed. ठीक है? But you guys are going too fast. Every 2 weeks, there's a new word. Like when we were growing up, once every 4 years. Like 2010 में मस्त मार्केट में एक योलो आया था. ठीक है? 4 साल हमने योलो चलाया. तुम लोग 2 हफ्ते में we have to keep up. And it's very difficult. You guys don't know YOLO. You're so young, you don't know YOLO. Sir, are you asking your friend what is YOLO? Yes, you only live once. That is what I cannot believe I'm explaining YOLO to somebody your age. You guys moved, this is what I mean. Y'all have moved past YOLO. It's exhausting keeping up. It's so confusing. Let him cook, good thing. He is cooked, bad thing. Like how to keep up with you guys. You guys say the weirdest, what is that thing you all say? What is it? Delulu is the only, कैसे पहुंचे IIT में? Delusion or solution नहीं बोल सकते आप. Delulu is the only solulu. And it's okay, right? Because the one thing I appreciate is, even though you come up with new lingo, the meaning is still the same. You guys say Delulu is the only solulu. When we were growing up, we used to say SL world में रहूंगा मैं. घर नहीं. But it was better because we also supported a local business while talking about it. What's that other thing? Another thing I love that people say, when I was growing up, if something happened, people would be like, कैसे हुआ? We'd be like, पापा के contacts. हाँ? आजकल तुम लोग क्या बोलते हो? I manifested. I manifested this. BMW 3 Series कहाँ से आया? I manifested. The man was Papa, but I manifested. I love taking the joke to you guys because the one thing is, no IIT topper has ever said मैंने manifest किया. ठीक है? He's like मैं बहुत रगड़ा, बहुत depression में गया, और फिर कैसे ना कैसे हुआ. ठीक है? But manifest. I love manifest. It's too cool. The other thing I love about you young kids is that one thing that I hate about you young kids is you all grow up with all these weird notions. Like people tell you, like you live in this age of wholesome memes, where from a young age only people tell you things like, feel your feelings. Be vulnerable. How dare you? How dare you have all these things? Right? You get wholesome memes. You all tell each other things like, check on your friends for no reason at all. क्या है ये? Huh? क्या है ये? I can't do that in my generation. I can't at the age of 40 suddenly start checking on my friends. I can't suddenly call my friend and be like, हाँ सुन तन्मय तू ठीक है? His first response is not going to be awe. He's going to be like, why? Who said what? Who you're talking to? Tell. There are other thing also that you all do, no? Where it's like, what? Tell your friends you love them for no reason at all. No, don't do that. That's horrifying. You can do it in your generation. अपने generation में नहीं चलता. Again, age 40, if I pick up the phone and I'm like, हाँ सुन आशीष, I love you. He is not going to be like, oh, उसका उधर जो फटेगा ना, he is immediately going to run and be like, भाई गाड़ी निकाल, रोहन कूदने वाला है. ठीक है? हाँ? Rohan is high, very high, but that's not relevant. I am, but that's not relevant. No, I'm kidding, I'm not. But I am. No. But it's crazy, like you guys are taught all these insane things. Like, I'm so jealous you guys live in this age of like pop culture, where you have shows like sex education, wholesome memes. You all know how to do things like talk to the opposite sex. What a concept. What a concept. You guys tell each other things like, I love you. Guys know how to talk to girls. Girls know how to talk to guys. Apne zamane mein ye sab nahi tha. Our parents didn't talk to us about this stuff. You all have all these cool, communicative parents and cousins, no? When you walk into the room, they say all these things like, "Haan, so beta, no girlfriend or boyfriend also, huh? We don't care." Spoiler alert, they care very badly. But our parents didn't bother with any of that. Our parents used to be like, "देखो TV देखो, जो सीख जाओगे सीख जाओ." Our parents didn't talk to us. Our parents talked to teacher. And then they came home and their hands talked to us. ठीक है? Like you all grew up with cool shows. We had to learn everything about love from 90s Bollywood movies. And you can ask your teachers about this. Not a good source of education at all. Like you guys think Animal is bad, buddy. You have no idea, okay? We were taught by Bollywood movies that there are, like for example, our parents were so bad at this that when I was growing up, Amir Khan made one full movie to tell parents, देखो तुम्हारा बच्चा dumb नहीं है, उसको condition है जिसका नाम है dyslexia, ठीक है? And 80% of the parents responded with, हाँ लेकिन try तो मारते हैं, क्या पता 2 थप्पड़ में उसका vowel consonant सब sort हो जाएगा. This is what we grew up with. This is a fact. We grew up with movies that taught us that there are only 2 ways to approach a girl that you love. Only 2 ways. First way, very amazing. Never tell her. Full life, never tell. Just watch from behind bush. Full life, watch from behind bush. Let her meet someone else. Let her marry that person. Let her have child with that person. And then, at the least convenient moment, one day, jump out from behind bush and take bullet for her. And then, look at her, say, I love you. And then, because you are man, don't wait for her opinion. Die. Just straight up, die. You must now be the elephant in that room, in that relationship forever. जब भी वो लोग लड़ेंगे, she'll be like, yeah, but you know, Rohan took a bullet for me. And he'll be like, हाँ, मुझे पता होता इतनी चूचू करेगी तो मैं ही ले लेता. That was the first way. The second way, I will admit, was healthier. It was way healthier. We were taught that, hey, don't mess around with a girl's feelings until you are 100% sure in your heart that you love her. Okay? Don't do anything until you are 100% sure in your heart that you love this girl. And on the day that you are 100% sure that you love her, go to her wedding. और उधर बता दो. ठीक है? Like we didn't have communicative parents. There were no like shows that showed parents loving children and like spending time with them. Like, you know, now you have all these cool dads on TV and all. अपने time में नहीं था. In fact, when I was growing up, there was only one show on Indian TV which had an Indian child who was raised by 2 parents who loved him, who talked to him every day, who spent time with him every day, and showered him with affection on a daily basis. You know what show that was? Jungle Book. That's right. It was an actual, the best Indian parents when I was growing up on TV were a bear and a panther. ठीक है? बहुत अलग ज़माना था हमारा. It was a very, very strange time. But here now we are in the era of innovation unleashed. Do you guys all see yourselves as innovators in this room? Yes? Yes? No, I really like, नहीं. मेरे को बस TCS पे जॉब चाहिए. नहीं करेंगे इनोवेशन हम. नहीं चाहिए इनोवेशन तुम लोगों का. हम नहीं करेंगे. नहीं होगा हमसे. Why like this, guys? Why aren't you innovators? This country needs more innovators, all right? We can't have more LinkedIn people. We can't have more LinkedIn people. I can't do more of this hustle and grind corporate culture, right? I tried to take my LinkedIn learnings to other people. I was like, oh, I've also been on LinkedIn. मैं जाके ज्ञान पेलता हूँ, चलो. So I went to my security guard. And I was like, bro, love your hustle. Crazy grind set, bro. But did you know that a great man has said that you should work 70 hours a week? And then my watchman looked at me and said, sir, मैं 4 जॉब करता हूँ. मेरा 70 घंटा ट्यूसडे को हो गया. अब मैं पूरा हफ्ता नहीं आ रहा. So I was like, you don't appreciate the grind set, bro. So I went to my cook. And I was like, Sunita, you see this chapati you are making? She was like, aa gaya wapas. I was like, you know, Sunita, some people say out of the frying pan into the fire is a bad thing. But this chapati has to go from the frying pan into the fire, and only then will it expand to its true potential. But if you leave it there too long, Sunita, it will burn out. So anyway, I'm looking for a new cook. Sunita's not there anymore. It's a sad time. But that's okay, because we can move on very quickly before Dr. Vogels comes here. I actually have a very short quiz for you guys. You guys know I love quizzing. But I've gone through this quiz. I will say this. It's not an easy quiz for me, because I'm a media student. Okay? I had to Google all the answers, but I feel like as IITians, you guys will get it. I'm going to ask the question. If you know the answer, just raise your hand. I will ask you. If the answer is correct, you will get a prize. And I don't mean placement. I mean like an actual prize. You will get an actual prize. So I'm going to give you guys an actual prize. So I'm going to start with question number 1. Don't just shout out the answer. Okay? As fun as that might be to do, don't innovate and disrupt so much also. All right? I'm going to ask you the question, and then on the basis that someone's going to come out and hand you your prize if you get the answer right. So, first question. What is the name of the artificial intelligence system developed by Daniel Bobrow? Guys, I'm worried. I will say this, I'm worried about the future of the country. I'll give you guys a hint. It is something that, oh, someone's raised their hand. Where? Yes.
Student.
Yes, it is student. Correct. What's your name, brother?
Samaksh.
Samaksh, give Samaksh a round of applause. And also make sure he sits first at placement interview. Everybody else was quiet. Samaksh, you win everybody's respect. Now, second question. I'm afraid. I thought this was going to take 10 minutes, but clearly we could be here a while. Which service model in cloud computing, which service model in cloud computing provides users with virtualized computing resources over the internet? There's a person here. You can shout it. What? Why are you telling me your password? What? EC2 what?
AWS EC2 offered by AWS. Elastic Cloud Compute.
No, this was not branded question.
Okay.
This was simple question only. Hey. Okay, I'll give you a hint. Right? It's a really weird hint, but the abbreviation for this thing is also the name of one of our country's civil services. Yes.
IAS, Infrastructure as a Service.
अरे डबल अपॉर्चुनिटी ले रहा है डबल इसको हाफ प्राइस दे दो ठीक है फाड़ के दे दो प्राइस no kidding but okay fine you can have it yes infrastructure as a service give him a round of applause. Let's see if you know the third answer. Sorry brother, fastest finger first. Okay, what is the name of the AI or type of AI which allows machines to handle vague information with a deftness that mimics human intuition? What is the name of the type of AI that allows machines to handle vague information, but in a way that mimics human intuition? Yes, sir. Not LLM. Not LLM. Yes, sir. It is fuzzy logic. Yes. Yes. Give it up. Round of applause. Stand up. Stand up and take your prize. And also stand up because you legit look like a proper hacker from movies. Like, oh my God, like, congrats, well done. Like, you are the most hacker-looking person. Hacker hai bhai? All right, okay. Fourth question. What are the total number? I just need the number, all right? I will, for advanced clarification, happily take the names, but I just need the number. Total number of logical symbols in AI. Yes, it is 5. Correct. Round of applause. There we go. You want to say which ones they are also? No, correct. He's like, ज़्यादा मत पूछ. Prize मिल गया already, ठीक है? पगा मत. But in case you guys want to know, mostly because I want to know actually, it's negation, conjunction, disjunction, implication, and biconditional. Okay, professor. You understand that if you say this, I'll just say yes, right? मैं मीडिया किया, टीवी जर्नलिज्म, मैं अर्नब गोस्वामी के साथ काम किया. तू सिर्फ हाई वॉल्यूम में बोलेगा तो मेरे को समझेगा. बाकी कुछ नहीं समझता मेरे को. Equals to, not equals to, correct, sure, yes. I agree with you. Question 5. In machine learning, what is the purpose of a loss function? Okay, say that again. But this time slowly. Like assume I'm not, but assume I'm stupid.
Hello.
Yes, that is the word I was looking for. Yes,
Optimizing
absolutely.
models.
Give a round of
In simple
applause.
words.
What?
It's optimizing models.
It's optimizing models.
Yep.
No, that was Vijay Mallya. Okay, question 6. All right. What is the term used to describe the ability of a cloud service to automatically scale up or down its resources in response to changes in demand? No. Look, yes. Not auto scaling. That's not the answer I have here. Yes. That is correct. That is correct. Give it up for Elastic Man. Congratulations. There we go. Also known as things GeoCinema doesn't have. Question 7. Which AI technology is known for creating realistic images, text, and videos? What is the name of the technology? What is the name of the technology? Yes, sir. It is generative AI. Correct. That is correct. Round of applause. I'm feeling bad for the guy that had to give the whole long, full one-sentence answer, where he was like error and predictive value. Okay, question 8. Question 8. Are you ready? All right. What is the primary purpose of a generative adversarial network in the field of generative AI? What is the primary purpose of a generative adversarial network in the field of generative AI? Yes, okay. To do what? Yes, who said generate more authentic data? Who said more authentic? Someone just said it literally. Yeah, there we go. Yes, that I will. Can we tear the prize in 3 and give it to the person in the blue shirt there? Yes. Correct. It is to generate new data that mimics a given data set. All right. Last 2 questions. Last 2 questions to win prizes. Last 2 questions. Question 9. What AI technique involves training a model on a large data set and then fine-tuning it on a smaller specific data set for a new task? Should I repeat the question? Oh no. Yes, ma'am. It is transfer learning. Okay, last question, okay? Last-est question of this quiz. What is the term for the challenge of interpreting and understanding the decision-making process of complex AI models? There is a person right there at the back. Yes, it is explainable AI. That is correct. Round of applause. Yes. Okay, cool. I have been told that the main guest is running a little late, so I have to extend a little bit. Yes, correct. That's absolutely fine. I can do that. I just need to know how much language am I allowed to use. 0. Well, cool. I'm going to stand here and look at each of you intently for the next 5 minutes, one at a time. That should 100% be fun. Like, how far away is sir? I will do the staring accordingly. No, I'm kidding. What? Where is he? Bhopal. Okay, cool. 5 minutes. He's coming today, so that's fine. I have no more questions for you all, unfortunately. So I'm going to have to go back to telling you all stories about my life, which is, of course, very thrilling enterprise, straight up, full on. Again, I was telling you all about how sad it was for my generation, like growing up. Like, how many people here, I want by show of hands, how many people here saw the movie Animal? Now, by show of hands, how many of you all were offended by it? Hey, there we go. One person, 2 people were offended by it, right? That's fair enough. That's one of those things, right? Like, So I saw the full hype and debate around Animal, all right? And I have a very simple thing. When people start getting angry about stuff, I'm like, मैं 2 साल बाद देखेगा. Because also, honestly, it's way more fun to try and figure out what the plot of the movie is based on your reactions to it and the memes that you all make on it. So I haven't seen Animal, but I'm going to tell you what I think the plot of Animal is based on your memes about Animal, okay? So Animal is about a guy played by Ranbir Kapoor who lives in a land that has no barbers. Right, at all. Like it's horrifying, like first of all, because first of all, this is a movie where Anil Kapoor and Ranbir Kapoor live in a land with no barbers. I don't know how anyone could see anything by the second half. Like, honestly. But one day, while Ranbir Kapoor is going about his business, he meets this beautiful girl who has a jaw disability. And she's like, I love you. And he's like, oh my God, that's so hot. And he marries her on one condition. She can do whatever she wants, but she can never ask him about his father. Correct? She can never ask him about his father. And that's important, that she can never ask him about his father, because I don't understand why everyone called the movie regressive, because then I found out the movie is set in Delhi. So to have a boy who's saying, don't ask about my father. तू नहीं जान सकती मेरा बाप कौन है. Like, that's what the movie is about. And then people calling Animal a toxic movie. You guys think Animal is a toxic movie? No, I'll tell you what. I don't think Animal is Ranbir Kapoor's most toxic movie. I think Ranbir Kapoor's most toxic movie is Wake Up Sid. Yeah, that's right. I said it. I said it. Wake Up Sid. Because Wake Up Sid lied to an entire generation of people. Wake Up Sid taught an entire generation of children that if you leave Mummy Papa's house in South Bombay and become photographer for magazine, you and one female flatmate will be able to afford sea-facing house. Like, that is true toxicity, all right? Like, I live in Mumbai, okay? I can tell you, forget sea-facing. If you as a boy and one female flatmate can get house anywhere, मैं भरेगा पैसा. ठीक है, मैं खुशी से भरेगा पैसा. मैं वो पिक्चर देखा. I know, I live in Bombay. I know where Ranbir Kapoor lives. I know where Konkona Sen Sharma lives. I know where Ayan Mukherjee lives. The only person from that movie who has sea-facing house is Karan Johar. This simple fact of life. Like, I actually think Wake Up Sid is a psychological thriller. I think so. I think Wake Up Sid is not a comedy. It's a psychological thriller. I think the first half of the movie is real. I think the second half of the movie is just a hallucination he has as he steps out of his parents' house for the first time in his life and confronts reality. All right? Like, I don't know how much you guys know about South Bombay. We don't have autos in South Bombay. Which means first time he goes out in the city, life में पहली बार 25 के उम्र पे वो बंदा ऑटो देखता है. उसका जो दिमाग फट गया होगा देख के, ओ माय गॉड, यहाँ के लोग कितने गरीब है. उनके गाड़ी में सिर्फ 3 टायर है. Like, I think that his brain just explodes and he goes into a coma, which is what gives the movie its title. Exactly correct. That is what it is 100% about. That's why I think that was true toxicity. All right? Like, for example, when I was growing up, we didn't see any movies where men communicated feelings well, where men... In fact, I still don't believe there's been a single movie in India that has shown a man communicate feelings properly. Like, not one. I don't think there's one movie in India that has shown an Indian man expressing his true feelings with complete vulnerability and no filters. Not one. Except for that one YouTube video of that guy who went paragliding. I still believe that is the only cinematic masterpiece. तुम लोग हंस रहे हो. If you don't know what I'm talking about, if you guys don't know what video I'm talking about, go home today, go on YouTube, look for Indian paragliding funny, and click on any one of the first 1,000 results. Okay? And you see what I mean. You guys are laughing. I think it's a cinematic masterpiece. What? Green shirt. Yeah, exactly. It's amazing, right? Like that entire, it is a cinematic masterpiece about how men in India live their life from birth to death. It's true. In 3.5 minutes, it's a story of birth to death. The beginning is birth. where this man is strapped to this contraption. चेहरे पे लिखा है, he is not prepared for this. उसके पीछे 4 बंदे, एक उसके पीठ पे बैठा है. ठीक है, वो 4 बंदे उसको कॉन्फिडेंस दे सकते. They can give him clarity, they can give him some guidance, they can say don't be afraid. Do any of them say that? बस एक बंदा देख के बोलता है, भाग बोलेंगे तब भागना है, नहीं तो चोट लग जाएगी. I call that guy dad. And then they start shouting, bhag, 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 and this guy runs. And he runs and he jumps, and like a modern day Bikram Betal, they jump into the air. And for the first 20 seconds, he actually acts like he's having a good time. I call this teenage. Because he's got cloud around him. So he's pretending, he's like, oh, charo taraf kohra hi kohra. And then in what I believe is the greatest transition in cinematic history, the kohra goes away. And he realizes how screwed he truly is. And I call that adulthood. And then, because he's a man who has no emotional tools, he, of course, doesn't know how to express himself, but he speedruns all stages of therapy. Starts with arrogance. Land kara de. Land me now. Then, arrogance is over, he moves to bargaining. Please land kara de. 100-200 zyada de, because again, as IITians, you will appreciate, Indian men, we don't have emotional tools, but so much audacity, we will bribe gravity also. कहाँ न्यूटन सर से बात हो गई, 500 रुपए दे दिए, उसने बोला, for you today, action, I have no reaction. All right, that's my time, guys. Thank you so much. My name is Rohan Joshi, and let's get on with the main show now.
Thank you, Rohan, for reminding us why we should never leave comedy to the engineers. Now, the moment we've all been waiting for, I'm very excited to introduce our guest for today. He's one of the key architects behind AWS, a tech luminary, passionate about driving positive change in the world by fostering entrepreneurship and supporting young businesses that are working to solve some of the hardest problems through technology. Some of you might know him best for his annual tech predictions, or perhaps from his Now Go Build TV series, where he travels all across the world to unearth amazing startup innovation stories. Please join me to welcome on stage Dr. Werner Vogels, CTO of Amazon.com.
Well, this is going to be a hard act to follow. It's the first time as a technologist that you have to follow a comedian. You know, I always thought I was funny, but that's not going to work today. I do want to talk about something actually a little bit more serious. I think, you know, you're all here in a technology education institution that's quite famous in the world. You get an amazing technology education. And probably most of you are thinking about using technology in your job after this. So you're here in school to sort of have a good life after this. But and most of those may involve, you know, working maybe for a very large consulting company. Maybe you go to a startup. But you know, in general, it's sort of predictable the kind of work that you'll be doing. However, I do think that that we've come in a phase of technology where we need to make sure that technology is not only used for whatever I say the major capitalistic goals. You know, they're still good. You know, we still all would like to work for a good business, absolutely. But I also think that we have an opportunity to fix some of the world's hardest problems using technology. And actually, the first time that I always thought that sort of solving these really hard, big human problems were for non-profits, yeah, or for governments, or things like that. But one of my first trips here to India for Amazon, I met a founder of a company called Classel. And Classel actually was sort of the middleman between people that weren't educated at all and companies that needed more educated workers for them. And so his goal was really to do good. He really wanted to sort of help educate a very large class of people that would not have access to education. And he could have good business at the same time because his large companies were paying his company. And so that was the first time that this light bulb went on my head, thinking, you know what, you can build technology for good and do good and solve really hard problems and have a good business at the same time. These two things are not mutually exclusive. Yeah? You can do good and have a good business at the same time. And actually, some of these problems that need to be solved are huge. So you may actually have a really good business solving them while doing good at the same time. Now, probably if we're thinking about technology for good, it's very hard these days to escape the word AI. Yeah? And mostly because we think AI is something we just discovered. That's not the case. We'll talk about that. But I would like to, and why is it that there is so much more to AI than what you've seen in the past 18, 24 months, is because of this quote of John McCarthy. I mean, John McCarthy and Minsky were two of the fathers that coined the term artificial intelligence for the first time. McCarthy also had this quote: as soon as it works, we don't call it AI anymore. Maybe you can flip it around as well. Yeah? If it's called AI, it doesn't work yet. Yeah? But I'm not really sure whether it works both ways in that sense. Yeah? And it is really, if you think about AI, it's not something that just came around the corner suddenly. Yeah? Actually, if my clicker works. Hello. Clicker gods, please. Yes. Okay, 3,000 years ago, Aristotle and Plato were already discussing, whether it would be possible to have machines do human work. And in those days, really the sort of philosophy was that the brain is a sort of symbol processing machine. And if you would think about having robots or whatever do human tasks, it actually needs to be top-down, coming from the brain. We need to be able to emulate that. Actually, all the way to the point that Plato in the Republic, his famous novel about the city-state, he actually describes robots doing household work. Yeah, so this is 3,000 years ago. And then in reality, nothing happens for 3,000 years. Until the first computers came to life. Because suddenly you had machines that could do symbolic manipulation. And immediately everyone that had some history in philosophy started thinking like, oh, wait, maybe we can now do these things that these old-time philosophers were thinking about and sort of emulate the human brain, because that was also a symbol manipulation machine. Didn't really go anywhere for a long time still. I mean, but there was hope. And I think one of our philosophers, our technology philosophers of modern time, wrote a great novel or a great paper on that. Alan Turing, for the first time, posed this question: can machines think? Yeah? And you probably all know the term the Turing machine. Yeah? And is it possible to ask a question and get from the response you're getting back whether it's able to distinguish whether a human actually answered your question or whether it was a machine? Now, maybe with the current chatbots, that's already something that you may not know. Is this indeed a customer service agent, or is it just a fully automated process? But still, it isn't until a number of years later, after Turing, unfortunately Turing had died by that time already, that there's a workshop in Dartmouth in the US with more or less McCarthy and Minsky as being the main players there, that for the first time coined the term artificial intelligence. But still, they were thinking top-down. They were still thinking, can we emulate the brain, what's happening in the brain, because that will be the way that we can build this artificial intelligence. Yeah? Still, that wasn't truly successful. There were some successes in that from taking in that approach. And it was what called expert systems. Yeah? I built a few of those. That's me when I still had hair. Yeah. And so, but in essence, they had some successes, but didn't really have this major impact. In essence, what the expert systems were was basically following a decision tree. And so you can imagine that, for example, quite a few doctors, GPs, are in their exploration of what may be wrong with this patient, purely follow a decision tree. Yeah, you do this, there's uncertainty there, you do this kind of lab results, you look at the results, you go to the left, and so you come to a decision and a diagnosis, eventually hoping that that's correct. So those kind of approaches you could do in expert systems. I wrote them in Prolog and in Lisp, but it didn't really catch on because they were not intelligence or any sort of true functionality by itself. We were just encoding how someone else already made decisions. The big change started when the robotics guys actually started thinking about this. Because what the robotics people did, and we call that area embodied AI, is starting to think about, wait, if we don't go top down, because that seems to fail, what about bottom up? And bottom up in this case was, what the robotics guys needed was, can we do sensor processing? Can we do language processing? Can we do text to speech, speech to text? Can we do vision? Can we do object detection? A whole range of things that we as humans can, but basically are sensors. Yeah? The signals that are coming from whether it's touch or vision or auditory, can we actually process that with computers and sort of focus on that one? Let's make sure we can do natural language processing. Make sure we can do text to speech, text. Let's make sure if we have an image that we can sort of determine, oh, that's a car, and that's an orange, and that's a cat. Those kind of things were sort of starting up, and that became truly successful. Because now we have massive systems actually across the world that really depend on this. And not only robotics, although robotics is actually kind of spectacular. This is an Amazon fulfillment center. That's basically where our packages sit and they get delivered, where we get picking and stuff like that. We have 105 of those around the world. Each of them has about 30,000 robots in it. These robots can't run into each other. Yeah? Yet they all have a particular task, but they need to be autonomous. Yeah? Because there's no one with a joystick sitting there steering those robots around. They need to avoid each other, they need to complete specific tasks. All of that is driven by sort of sensor processing. Take any modern car. If you buy yourself a new Audi or something like that, there's about 1,200 sensors in it. Long-range radar, short-range radar, image recognition, all these kind of things, even before we start thinking about autonomous driving. And so, all this kind of processing helped us to have human tasks encoded as technology. Now, then we get sort of this stepwise improvement every time. It starts off with deep learning. That's sort of the first version of successful AI processing. I call it machine learning. Because after all, I believe in McCarthy's statement that if it works, we don't call it AI. But machine learning really helps us sort of take very large data sets that are labeled and then build models out of that against which you can ask questions. The next step was sort of reinforcement learning, the kind of things that we need to have autonomous driving and things like that. But both of them were what's called supervised. Supervised basically means that we have to label things. We have to say, this is a car, this is a cat. And so all those labels, and that's especially if you have very large data sets, that it's enormous laborious work. And so that sort of limited the amount of data that you could process with machine learning and build these models out of. Then we got to, although there was a sort of little version in between that basically says that maybe we can just label 20% of this data set and then create a little model out of that and then have that label the rest of the data set. AWS have a version of that's called ground truth. And then, the holy grail was to do unsupervised learning. That means that we as humans didn't need to be in the loop. We didn't need to label anything. It could just process things by itself. And together with sort of the next generation of sort of technology transformers and vector databases, actually, the two things together brought us the ability to process enormously large data sets. And the focus of that was mostly on language, because that's where most of our large data sets are from. And so that delivered us what we know now as AI, which is the large language models and things like that. Massive, big data sets trained on petabytes and petabytes of data. Not necessarily, but it's still trained on that data. The quality of the machines, the quality of the output of the models still is determined by the quality of the data that you put into it. And so that's the large language models. I'm not going to talk about that, because everybody's already talking about it, and there's a lot of hype around it. Everybody believes it will solve world peace. I don't think so. I think as any technology, there's a really good reason to use this technology for a particular set of problems. It is language. It's great in human interaction. It allows us to interact with digital systems in a natural way and have these digital systems communicate back to us in a natural way. But it still requires us as humans to continue to use our brains. There is no intelligence involved in this at all. So I'm not going to talk about that. Because after large language models, this is not the end phase. We'll see another revolution happening. We'll see another revolution happening with which you can process even larger data sets, or much more multimodal data sets, and things like that. So it doesn't stop. But what I want to talk to you about is how we actually use what I would call old-fashioned AI. The AI that really, really works. Image processing, languages, translation, voice, all these kind of things that really work today and that you can use as tools today to implement systems. And I want to do that by using examples from young businesses that try to solve some of the world's hardest problems. And there are a lot of really hard problems in this world to solve. And some of these problems will arrive in the coming years. If you may believe the United Nations, their prediction is that by 2050, we'll have another 2 billion people on this planet. How are we going to feed them? How are we going to make sure they have an economic future? How are we going to make sure they have health care? Those issues are something that we already have a problem with today. Imagine we have to do this for 2 billion more people on this planet. What are the kind of things we can do as technologists to actually help build systems that solve these problems? So the way to sort of a little bit to categorize the problem set, I've used what's called the sustainability goals of the United Nations. Now, there's a whole range of them, education, water, sustainable cities, but I just want to pick a few out of that and and sort of talk about sort of how technology is being used already by young businesses to solve some of these big problems. If you want to know more about it, I did a documentary TV series called Now Go Build, that actually sort of where I interview and dive deep into these young businesses that solve these problems. Actually, that one was actually done here in India a number of years ago with a company from Bangalore, Swende. And Swende has two founders that are really interested in making sure that Indian heritage culture, artistry, stays alive. Many of the old art forms are disappearing, and what they want to do is basically merging sort of these old art styles with modern goods. And whether it's your lamps, whether it's a laptop sleeve or whatever. And there is amazing cultural heritage in and around this Indian art. And at the same time, quite a few of these artists are women. And so they have two goals. On one hand, to sort of preserve this age-old art, and at the same time making sure that a certain part of the society that wouldn't have a good income actually can have a good business. And so it's about empowering women as much as that it is about saving old art. But so that's one of the examples. You can find this back, now go build, you can find on Prime Video, YouTube, AWS's website, things like that. One of the first episodes I did is still one of my favorites because it opened my eyes for how we can use technology to really solve big problems. Hara is a young business in Jakarta, in Indonesia. In Indonesia, smallholder farmers do not have an identity, or most of them don't have an identity. That means if you do not have an identity, you can't go to the bank to get a loan to buy your seeds. You have to go to the loan shark in the village who will charge 40, 50% interest. That means half of your crop is already gone before you even planted it. So what they do, they give these smallholder farmers an identity, and they measure that plot of land and the yield of that plot of land. That data set, together with the identity, makes this a very interesting data set to be processed, together with some satellite data, things like that, for banks and government institutions to use. Suddenly, these banks are very much interested in giving these smallholder farmers a loan. And why? Because there's a 100% repay rate. Yeah, because it's backed by the yield of their land. Yeah, so there's data publishers in this case. It's sort of the identity, it's what the farmers provide the information, and all sorts of others. Combine that, AI, process that, put it together, and then suddenly there's all these other companies that are very much interested in this data. And these farmers now see a much more, let's say, a much brighter economic future because they don't need to spend half of the money on interest on the loan that they got. Yeah, and these are sort of the numbers around that, in a number of years ago where they were. So one of these areas, of course, where we will see sort of challenges if we have to feed a lot more people is food. Yeah? One of the biggest food sources for people around the world is rice. Yeah? And it's about 50% of the world actually depends on rice. And so there's a research institution in South Manila. It's called the International Rice Research Institute. And they have as their goal to abolish poverty and hunger among populations that depend on rice-based agriculture. And they built all sorts of technologies for that to help farmers become more independent, to be more successful, to become more reliable, to make sure that, you know, under all sorts of circumstances, they deliver their goods. They also have the largest collection of rice DNA in the world. About 200,000 strands of DNA sits in their freezers. And they can recreate any type of rice. They've also done a lot of research on the quality of rice. The golden rice, the one with a lot more vitamin D in it. How do you actually grow rice plants where the seedlings are underwater and have to grow up? All these kind of things come out of this research institution. But they have a problem because everybody keeps sending them new types of rice. And to get them into the freezer, they need to carefully select each rice seed, whether it's actually suitable for storage long term. And it was a human problem because they basically had humans do this. And with a very simple embodied AI approach, put a little camera on top of that, do identification, build a little system on that, do identification of what are good seeds, what are bad seeds, and suddenly that whole backlog disappears. Yeah? Isn't the world shocking kind of example? But it is sort of shows how with very simple tools and techniques we can make quite a bit of impact. And they do a lot of these kind of things. And one of the things, because they are targeting smallholder farmers mostly, most of these farmers actually do not have smartphones. They often can't read and write. And so have just no access to digital infrastructure. They often do have a phone in the village. And so what IRA did is build a voice-driven system. Yeah? Again, voice to text, text to voice, things like that. So where farmers can call into, express their plot of land, where it is, how big it is, and the system will give them advice back how much fertilizer to buy and when to apply it. None of these farmers have ever been educated on this. And as such, they use way too much fertilizer, which means there's massive runoff into the rivers around the areas there, and you get lots of algae growth, and these rivers get polluted, things like that. So it's not only helping them sort of minimize their cost and optimize their yield of the land, but also protecting the environment around it. This is all technology. It's AI. Yeah? Voice to text. You do whatever your digital system finds the answer, speaks it back. And I think actually voice access will be crucial if we want to make sure that we are inclusive, that everybody is able to access digital systems. And especially in areas where the government starts to deliver more and more and more of their services digitally, voice access is crucial. Because it is inclusive. Because not everybody can read and write, not everybody has access to cell phones or computers. And so that's absolutely crucial. Now, think about protein. Yeah, that's another food source that is crucial to people. Now, in India, you don't think that much about cattle in that sense, because you don't necessarily eat them, the rest of the world does. Yeah? And, however, cattle is the most inefficient way of growing protein. To get 1 kilo of cattle, you need to feed them 8 kilo of food. And next to that, they produce all sorts of side effects that are very unhealthy for our planet. The best way to grow protein actually is to grow fish. 1 kilo of fish results in 1 kilo of protein. 1 kilo of fish feed results in 1 kilo of fish. Yeah? And so there's this young business called Aquabite. And they have these massive pens. Again, a young startup, really big pens in the fjords in Norway and in Scotland and in Chile, where each of those pens hold about 200,000 salmons. And they grow them in that. So how do they use technology in that? It's mostly computer vision and a whole bunch of other sensors as well in the water, the saline content, like that. So they can actually track the individual fish, how they grow, and more importantly, whether or not they become sick. And sick means having lice. Because as soon as they get lice, which is apparently a common problem among fish, all the 200,000 other fish will pretty quickly get it as well. So it's crucial to immediately remove the fish that have lice. Because otherwise, you have to kill off 200,000 salmons. That's not what you want to do. And so it's all about sustainable growing of fish. Yeah? And so they use all these different sensors. Then they have a massive database by now about well over 1 billion of fish. And they're able to actually sort of build these production systems, not in fish farming like you do on land, but actually in the wild. And they're becoming a really productive company in that sense, solving a really big problem for the world at the same time. How do we make sure there's protein in the future for everyone? Now, if we go back to the sustainability goals, what about health? How can you make sure that there's healthcare available for everyone? Now, think about sort of, and I'm not going to give you this big picture about how we're going to solve everything, but there are small problems to be solved that are crucial. And think about how to use AI in healthcare. There's many small ways in which healthcare is actually already improved by AI, not by these large LLMs yet, but by actually traditional old-fashioned AI. Sweden, for example, has a national health program in which women over 50 can every 2 years can get a mammogram looking for early signs of breast cancer. And a radiologist that has to screen through these images sees thousands of those a day. At the end of the day, his eyes aren't that good anymore. Simple image recognition AI finds 30% more cancers than a single radiologist. And is as good as 2 independent radiologists looking at the same image. Yeah? Simple technology works really well in many of these situations. Now, but is that one of the big problems? Yeah, it's one of the restaurant problems. But think about how do we get vaccines in remote areas? for areas where kids actually just need to be vaccinated against recent new diseases, and especially take, for example, in Africa, where Mpox is actually a serious problem at the moment. How do we get everybody vaccinated to it? Swoop Aero is a company that tries to achieve this. So they basically use drones to deliver vaccines to remote areas so that kids can get vaccinated with things that we all get vaccinated about, against polio, about measles, and in this case, Mpox. And maybe in those days that when we had COVID, also COVID. How do you get these vaccines to remote areas? They use drones. And you have to remember that a drone is just one big box of AI. There's nothing else in it almost. Because these drones need to be autonomous. There is no pilot steering this drone. It gets told where to go. In the meantime, however, it needs to avoid objects. It needs to avoid objects in the air, birds, for example. You may not think that birds are that big of a problem, but wouldn't be the first time that I've seen an eagle plugging out a big drone out of the air just because it thinks it's some sort of animal. Or, you know, the place where you need to land, there's a dog running around. Or someone just put up a washing line and hang out the washing outside. These may seem simple problems, but drones need to be autonomous. And for that has a whole set of sensors and is able to process that using AI models. Orbis is another very interesting company that tries to solve increasing blindness with people that actually have problems with their eyes, often driven by diabetes. And there's many areas. I mean, there aren't that many ophthalmologists in this world. And one of the things that they try to do, because there's only 3 ophthalmologists, I think, per million people, that they actually build technology that does eye scans and that can sort of predict what your rate of decline of your eyes is and what kind of medicine and actually actions you should take to avoid getting blind over time. Very simple. Again, simple AI technologies that work really well and can solve hard problems. Surgenics, another one that solves one of these targeted problems. Apparently, and I didn't know this statistic, 1 in every 200 babies that gets born has a brain defect. Most of these brain defects are not discovered until months or years later. Yet, when a baby gets born, we do test his ears and his eyes and whether it can scream and whether its lungs work, all of those kind of things, but we don't test its brain functionality. What this company has developed is a very small, sort of a little cap that you put on the baby's head, you measure its EEGs, and then it compares it, using AI, to sort of the massive data set that they've created for EEGs. Babies' EEGs are radically different from grown-ups. Yeah? With this, and what they really try to achieve is that in every birth center, these caps are available to test for brain defects. Because if you can start targeting this immediately after birth, the likelihood that these people, either you can fix the brain defect or you can give them a high quality life if you can target this much earlier. Yeah, so all of these examples that I'm giving are often computer vision. And why? Because it looks much better on screens. Yeah? But there's a ton of other work, you know, whether that is sort of much more textual, whether it's forecasting, whether it's predictions, whether it's security management, all of these kind of things. Yeah? Every form of AI is being used to do good. However, none of this works if we do not have data. Data is the basis for all of this. Yeah? AI is nothing without the data that it's being trained on. And high quality data as such is crucial for this. And quite a few of these younger businesses, they're creating their own data sets, like Aquabyte. Yeah? Now it's a data set of 1/1 billion fish, which they can use to continuously improve their machine vision algorithms. The problem also is that often data is a privileged data set that companies hold close to themselves. And as such, you know, if you want to do good, it's often very hard to get access to this data. Or often that data is just doesn't exist. A good example is that of the Philippines. So the Philippines, if you may know, sits in what's called Typhoon Alley. That means every typhoon that arises in the Pacific will hit the Philippines. Next to that, they have volcanoes and earthquakes. Yeah? That is a country that continuously is hammered by natural disasters. And so to be able to help people, for example, the Red Cross needs to be able where these people are, to know where they are. Or give them advice if there's an earthquake, this is the building you should go to because that one's the most structurally sound. Those maps don't exist. Because what I didn't know was that the big commercial maps of the big commercial map companies that we all use because we cannot get around our towns anymore without looking at our smartphone, these commercial mapping systems only map those areas that are commercially interesting. They don't map things outside in the country because there's nothing to sell. There's nothing to pay for these systems. And such, they don't make investments in it. And so very large parts of the Philippines are not mapped. They're basically called the unmapped. And as such, emergency services can never reach them. Now, the humanitarian OpenStreetMap group, I don't know if you know OpenStreetMap, that's an open source system with mapping around the world. The humanitarian OpenStreetMap team helps build, sort of increase this density of these maps in areas that are normally unmapped. And so in the Philippines, for example, on a Saturday afternoon, you may see a whole group of people walking around with apps on their cell phone, mapping streets, indicating which buildings are structurally sound to use in terms of earthquakes. Really cool, really interesting project going on, where as doing good, we're actually with volunteers building bigger data sets that can be used. Here in India, I'm absolutely impressed by the Namayatri young business. Yeah? Their goal is, of course, to give, by cutting out the middleman, to give tuk-tuk drivers a better economic future. Where they can go, I think, from 400 rupees into 1,000 rupees just using the app and being direct. What is also happening is that these drivers actually become data sources for where roads are that are normally not mapped. So again, that data flows back into the OpenStreetMaps to get a much denser and much realistic view of where these roads are. And as such can be used by all sorts of different services. At Amazon, we're a big fan of opening up these data sets. And so one of the data sets is ASDI, or the system is ASDI, the Amazon Sustainable Data Initiative. And for example, one of the big of those is Digital Earth Africa, where we've been able to convince NASA, ESWA, and JAX to give us all the satellite data of the past decades of Africa. And a lot of research happens on top of that. For example, looking where new roads are being built that nobody knows about. In general, they're an indication of illegal mining. Forest fires, how to manage them, early indications of areas that are very, very sensitive to those. Or, mangrove deterioration over time. The only reason why we can do this research is because these data sets are high quality and open to everyone to use. And so if we really want to use technology for good and want to use AI for good, we need to make sure that this data is available as well. And high quality data needs to be available to drive this research and to help these young businesses solve these really hard problems. Now there's a little bit of a history behind data that maybe if you've taken your data classes, you probably are already aware of. But the difference between structured and unstructured data. Now, if I think about structured data, 90s, databases were expensive, data storage was expensive, and as such, you only stored that data that you knew you needed to answer the questions that you normally would ask. SQL query, basically. Data model was fixed, that was the data you collected. If you actually changed your mind and you wanted to ask a different question, you couldn't, because you didn't have the data for that. So the change with, I like to credit cloud computing to that, where the storage became dirt cheap. and you could store as much data as you wanted. So now companies started storing all sorts of data with the idea that later on they may want to actually find something in that data that might be useful for them. And yeah, it becomes a haystack, yeah? A needle in a haystack. And so what's the best tool to find the needle in a haystack is you use a magnet. Machine learning is the magnet that we use in these big haystacks of data, finding new answers to questions you didn't know you had when you started collecting the data. Now let me give you another example that really thrives on this data, and it's a bit more of a serious example. There's a company called Forn, or an organization called Forn, and their goal is to build tools that stay ahead of child sexual trafficking and all the child sexual abuse. So they've built a system called Spotlight. In Spotlight, they have a massive database of images of missing children and missing women. Every day, they compare that database using machine learning against the 100,000 of new advertisements in the US of prostitution. They have already been able to find 18,000 victims among those 6,000 children that had been trafficked for the reason of sexual abuse. This is a serious problem in this world. We all know about that. We as technologists have the ability to build technology to help solve these problems or attack these problems. They also built another tool called Saver. And if you have a platform on which you allow others to contribute imagery or data in, how can you make sure that nobody stores data on that platform that is related to child sexual abuse? They've built this system in which you can actually use every image that is uploaded to your platform, you can push it through Savers, and they will tell you whether or not this is CSEM material. Yeah, and they have found well over 1 million of these files already on customer platforms. There are organizations like the New York Times, yeah, that allow customers to sort of interact with their news articles. But they want to make sure that whatever is actually stored on there is appropriate. They also build a system where you can push through, if you have some sort of social network or interaction network, where you can push conversations through between two individuals and get an indication whether this is grooming, where young women, for example, are groomed by these by these boys to actually eventually end up in sex trafficking. These are crucial tools to be built. They're not hard to build, as long as you have access to the right data and actually have an intention of doing good. We, as technologists, can solve these problems or contribute to solving these problems. Crucial in all of that is that if you want to build AI that does good, you need to have good data. You need to have very high quality data. And it works the other way around. If you have this great data set where you think you can get answers from, it needs good AI, because those are the tools that you can find these needles in the haystack. But without that, you know what? It all comes down to us. It comes down to us that we are willing to build technology to solve these problems. And I hope that, you know, whether you do this in your daily life, in your daily jobs after this, or whether in the evening hours you're contributing to open source projects that work on these particular problems, you know, it is us as technologists that can help solve some of these biggest problems that we have in the world. We do a lot of things in and around this at Amazon, because we have this leadership principle that says with scale and success comes broad responsibility. We see it as our responsibility to not only help people build the next generation of spam filters, but also to help organizations that want to do good, to help solve these really big, hairy problems. One of these organizations is Tech to the Rescue, and they have a program called AI for Changemakers, where they run a few cohorts of organizations that want to build good. For example, the first cohort of that was around disaster management. How do we deal in disasters? How can we be effective in that? And actually, quite a few of those are really are organizations that want to do really good, but don't really have the technical know-how. So I started a Go Build CTO fellowship, for example, to help these organizations beef up their technology knowledge, to make sure that their CTOs are well trained in what are the capabilities of these technologies. Yeah? Now, with all of that, AI is not necessarily magic, but it can do a lot of good. And that's already the AI, let's say, that we've built up to now. It's not necessarily the new versions of LLMs and things like that. Maybe they can play a role in that as well, but we have a whole body of work of AI that works really, really well. Remember, it works well, and as such, we don't call it AI anymore. So with that, I hope you guys go build some systems as well, and really help solve some of the hardest problems, whether you do that in your day job or even in your evening hours. It is up to us technologists to actually solve some of these world's hardest problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vogels, for being a guiding force and an inspiration to all the future innovators and leaders that are present in the room. We're immensely grateful for the time and energy you've invested in addressing the audience today, and your contributions will undoubtedly leave a lasting impact on all of us as we continue our journey in this ever-evolving world of technology. Now, as we come to the close of today's session, it is my honor to invite on stage the Director of IIT Delhi, Professor Rangan Banerjee, on stage to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Dr. Vogel. And thank you for telling us about AI for good, AI for food, and also when it works, it's no longer AI. So I think we've learned a lot, and you've given us the inspiration to look at go build AI. I hope you'll have some time also to interact with the students. So on behalf of the Institute, it's my great pleasure to thank you and to thank the Amazon team for making this happen. I'd like to also thank the audience for being here in such large numbers. Thank you.
Huh? I'm a mentor to Dr. Werner Vogels.
Yeah, that's what I was asking before.
I'd also like to request Professor Ranga Banerjee to kindly present a token of our appreciation to a distinguished guest, Dr. Werner Vogels.
Okay, yeah. Okay, wonderful. Oh, wow. It's beautiful. Oh, absolutely. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
We're also keeping many of our students.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no. Thank you very much all for this. I need an extra suitcase to go home. But thank you very much. Thank you for these gifts. I hope we can get some time to interact. I mean, we had great discussions up front about the origin of operating systems, which ones work and not, and all this research stuff. So I'd love to chat more with you guys. So hopefully see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for being a wonderful audience. The exit from the seminar hall will be from this side, towards my right and your left-hand side. Kindly take the exit from here. Do not use the main entrance of the seminar hall. Sorry? Yeah, sure. Cover.